From a knockout straight from the gods to such domination that a third fight might not happen. Here's how Israel Adesanya won the rematch against Alex Pereira. I must start with the knockout. You know, it's only fair. The last stylebender said the knockout was from the gods in the post-fight interview, and I do not disagree. It was truly a sensational right-hand punch, followed by another huge hook that ended the night, and Alex was asleep before he hit the canvas. For good measure, Adesanya added another hammer fist when the Brazilian was on the mat, and before he could land a second, the referee stopped the fight, thankfully for Pereira. It was just pure, brutal power. Ironically, something that Pereira is known for. However, the manner in which Adesanya came up with the money shot is what caught everyone off guard, including his opponent. You see, those two punches were against the run of play. He was getting pummeled left, right, and center. His back was against the cage, and Pereira was raining down body shots like a madman. That's why the perfect way to describe the KO from the Nigerian is that it was from the gods, because it really came out of nowhere. But the knockout was only the final touch of his complete performance, which actually began with his ring walk. Before the fight, the last stylebender embraced his family on the way to the octagon and revealed there was a reason behind it. He wanted to grab all the energy he could get, and it proved to be the difference in the end. There was a lot to prove for Adesanya. His entire reputation was on the line. And for someone who has dominated the division for as long as he has, it was an embarrassing defeat to recover from. More importantly, Pereira has Adesanya's number. Their rivalry transcends the MMA, as we'll take a look later in the video. So there was a lot that Israel needed to do in order to get ready for this fight. It wasn't just training. Like I said, embracing his family on the way to the octagon was also part of his plan. Not to mention the way he prepared himself mentally before stepping into the ring at UFC 287. Maybe for once, not being the clear favorite helped him. You can't say for sure, but what you can say is that Adesanya looked a lot calmer inside the ring during this bout. Compared to his loss, the Nigerian was more patient and wanted to play the long game, while remaining vigilant of Pereira's deadly hook, which could end just about any fighter anytime. So basically what he did was go back to the basics. He turned the fight into a calculated chess match. That was the only way he was going to win. The plan was clear. From the first round, Israel was going to feel his opponent out and then start chipping away at the Brazilian while fighting out the rounds and getting the decision win. It was a good plan, and the longer you draw out bigger athletes like Pereira, there is more of a chance that they tire out, and you get a shot at ending the fight with a big knockout. Now, that's not exactly how it happened, but Adesanya's patience paid dividends. He remained composed when things weren't going his way, and didn't rush into anything, which I have to add is his biggest skill. You see, it's very easy to get flustered when an opponent with a hard hand is drowning you out with punches. You can easily lose your head. But Adesanya's been so dominant in the division for so long because he has the patience. He likes to wait for his turn. He has a fantastic chin to take the damage and is more than aware of when he has the opportunity to checkmate his opponents. So, the Nigerian did what he does best. Pereira thought he'd gotten the win when he bullied the last stylebender against the ring, and 9 times out of 10, a fighter like Pereira comes away with a win from that point onwards. But this was that one time when he didn't, and the reason was Adesanya not losing his head while using the octagon space to his advantage. This was another point that the Nigerian himself revealed on YouTube while breaking down the fight. He explained that the secret to his victory was his willingness to trade shots when needed, but also being able to use the octagon space well enough to remain out of Pereira's reach. In fact, getting cornered against the ring was his plan all along. Yeah, Adesanya added that the only way he could get a knockout was if he knew Poatan was comfortable. And when you have your opponent at your mercy, that's when you feel the most confident and comfortable.
He got so comfortable. I wanted him to feel comfortable.
That's why Israel set the trap. And while it was a risky move, it ended up working. That said, don't think for 1 minute that it was a lucky break for Adesanya. All of his wins can be attributed to the hard work he puts into training, and the one against Pereira wasn't any different. From training daily, with a routine built around cardio, strength training, wrestling, sparring, and an intense pre-fight camp, Adesanya leaves it all out, and he definitely went the extra mile preparing for his toughest rival. His strength training is the difference maker, because most of Adesanya's wins are in the final rounds. or decision wins. It takes a lot of stamina to last that long in the fight, because just staying on your feet isn't what wins you these bouts. You've got to be at your best even in the last few seconds of the fight. And that's where his strength training comes in. These long runs on inclined terrains help him to burn those extra calories and get him in shape for just about any fighter in the world. Not to mention his shadowboxing routine, which some fighters tend to skip, but not Adesanya. Plus, he just had to do it all at a much higher level when preparing for his biggest rival, because it doesn't get bigger than Pereira for Israel. As I mentioned earlier, these two have a rivalry that goes beyond MMA. Before they decided to go down the mixed martial arts route, both Adesanya and Pereira had made a big name for themselves in kickboxing. However, Poatan was very successful against the Nigerian even during the kickboxing adventures, racking up 2 wins. The thing about combat sports is, you can forget anything in the world, but not your losses. According to some fighters, you even remember the knockouts regardless of whether they knocked you out cold or not. And from the looks of things, this was the case for Adesanya too. He never got over those 2 losses, and that's why he took the fight against Pereira in MMA, an art that he truly mastered. So, when the last stylebender lost at the UFC as well, it stung more than any other moment in his life. And that is why he simply had to take his revenge, which he did and enjoyed it too. Pulling out that arrow celebration was amazing to watch. That brings me to the next question. Is the trilogy fight on? Probably not. You see, Dana White isn't a huge fan of making that fight happen, and there isn't a lot of interest from the fighters either. Adesanya clearly believes he's done enough to have his title defense against someone other than Poatan, and surprisingly, Pereira isn't a fan of running it back for a 3rd time either. No, don't think for 1 second that he's afraid. He's just decided to fight at a weight that comes more naturally to him, the light heavyweight. There's no love lost between them, though as much as they respect one another, they have called each other out on a couple of occasions since the fight. But unfortunately, it just doesn't look like a fight that will happen, even though to some fans, it makes a lot of sense. The middleweight division doesn't have much star power, and Adesanya's beaten just about everyone there is to beat, so it's not like he's got plenty of options. The Nigerian isn't even a fan of Dricus du Plessis calling him out, so the fans have asked the right question. Maybe it is the perfect decision to make this one a trilogy fight. That said, Pereira might actually be doing the smart thing by not asking for a trilogy fight, because he got dominated throughout. Yep, don't get it twisted. Pereira had him against the ring, and he had the upper hand for a while there too, but this fight was a proper masterclass by Adesanya. He was clearly ahead on the scores by the time he'd landed the KO punches, and it was all set to be a dominant win for the Nigerian. Then, when you factor in his ability to actually punch hard and get a knockout win from the position he was in, it just goes to show how multi-talented the 33-year-old is. For Pereira, it might be foolish to cut weight and stick around the middleweight, when clearly his natural cut is for the light heavyweight or beyond. Unfortunately, if that happens, we won't get a trilogy fight, but it's for the best. So from a 3rd fight not happening because he got dominated to a knockout straight from the gods. Here's how Adesanya won the rematch against Alex Pereira.